In our news bulletin for this evening, Premier Toke Talangi voices disappointment following the third UN conference on small island developing states held in Samoa. Niue gets assistance from the New Zealand Defence Force through the Tropic Twilight exercise. Whale research team returns to the island and urge relevant stakeholders to finalise regulations to strengthen their work. Over 2,000 participants representing 115 countries descended upon Samoa for the third International Conference for Small Island Developing States, held in Apia, Samoa from the 1st to the 4th of September. The high-level meeting, held once a decade, started in Barbados 20 years ago. The second conference was held in Mauritius 10 years ago, but this was the first time this meeting was held in the Pacific. Niue's Premier Toke Talangi led a small delegation that attended the four-day SIDS meeting that addressed issues such as debt sustainability, non-communicable diseases, disaster risk reduction, as well as the sustainable development and management of oceans and seas, an area where SIDS have shown great leadership. Premier Talangi was very vocal about his disappointment at the level of inaction and lack of commitment in addressing the same issues highlighted at the last meeting.
There was nothing that was very different from what we saw in Mauritius 10 years before this, or the commitments that were made in Copenhagen. I found it disappointing, and I made a speech which was, to many people, quite bold or quite insulting to some of the countries. And I said, I've talked politely about this thing for many years, but it seems to me at the present moment that they haven't listened. So why should I continue to talk politely to people like that? These are political issues. Politicians should make decisions. Countries should make, in their political arenas, make decisions about this. And they haven't. So I call them climate cowards.
The overarching theme of the conference was the sustainable development of small island developing states through genuine and durable partnerships. Premier Talangi expressed that if there was anything to take away from this meeting or conference, it would be the opportunity to maintain durable partnerships and forge new and potential partnerships towards sustainable development.
The important thing for us is to maintain the partnerships we have with New Zealand, Australia, EU, Japan, those traditional partners who have always been with us. And I'm very happy that they have continued to support us, including some of our new diplomatic partners who will continue to support us. We sign diplomatic relations with Cuba. We'll talk to the United Kingdom High Commission to see whether we can develop a partnership with that country as well. They were curious as to who I meant when I talked about climate cowards for the countries that are involved. And I said, if you believe that you're part of that team, then of course your country and your politicians are climate cowards.
SIDS looked at a broad range of challenges facing SIDS, such as social, economic and environmental vulnerabilities, in particular the impact of climate change. This was one area that leaders from the Pacific continued to push for recognition in their pleas to larger countries to take action.
The larger countries must take more responsibility for the pollution that's happening at the present moment. Climate change is occurring because of the fact that they continue to pollute the earth. And it's the only one we've got. In 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years' time, this earth that we've got is not going to be the same. Therefore, they've got to accept responsibility for that happening. If there is a legacy they're going to leave behind, it is the fact that they didn't act when they should have acted. And now's the time to act. In fact, a bit late. But if they want to leave a legacy for their children's children and children, should act now.
The adoption of the outcome document, Small Island Developing States Accelerated Modalities to Action, the Samoa Pathway, highlighted the international community commitment to and partnerships with SIDS. The challenge now for countries is to take discussions and commitments to the next level and take action to make the necessary changes and redouble efforts until the next major conference in a decade. 40 engineering staff of the New Zealand Defence Force will be providing assistance to Niue until the middle of October as part of the Tropic Twilight exercise. Each year, the New Zealand Defence Force are deployed to a Pacific nation to test their operating capability in a demanding tropical environment and develop their ability to respond to natural disasters. This time round, Niue will benefit from the skills and expertise of the contingent that will be based at the Tuapa Community Hall. The group includes carpenters, plumbers, electricians, as well as logistical support staff who will be working on a number of projects and activities approved by the Niue government.
The principal activity will be at the Niue High School, where they'll be making much needed repairs to the hall there, which is used not only by the school but by the community. There'll also be some repairs to the Niue Primary School to get it through this coming cyclone season with a bit more comfort for the children and the teachers, and there are a number of other auxiliary tasks that the NZDF will be deployed on. All of the work has already been organised through the New Zealand High Commission and through the Government of Niue, through the Secretary of Government's office. So if there was a need for additional tasks, that's pretty unlikely given that they have a pretty full agenda at the moment, that approach would need to be made through the Government of Niue. I hasten to add that all of the costs in relation to equipment used, paint and the likes, is actually met by the Government of Niue through the Asset Maintenance Fund, which of course is supported by the Government of New Zealand.
Earlier this afternoon, 27 more personnel arrived on a New Zealand Defence Force aircraft with a few days to acclimatise before work starts on Monday.
They're here to integrate with the community. Please embrace them. They want to learn about Niue and they want to be more aware of the culture and the people of Niue. They'll be staying out at the Tuapa Hall. They're young men and young women, and logically, as young men and young women, will want to enjoy the experience here in Niue. So anything that the people of Niue can do to help them have a good, healthy, wholesome experience here, of course, would be appreciated. You'll see them about the community. I don't doubt that they'll participate in some sports activities that we're hoping will be arranged with rugby and possibly with some netball. So we'll just see how those activities sort of pan out.
Defence Force personnel will also participate in the upcoming 40th Constitution celebrations in October, where they will also be joined by a contingent from the offshore patrol vessel, the Otago. Well, researchers continue to urge relevant stakeholders to support the protection and celebration of whales by developing and endorsing the necessary laws and regulations to guide interaction with these protected species. For the past 5 years, the local NGO Omatawhua have been working closely with Fisheries and Legal Counsel to draft up guidelines and policies. Omatawhua is dedicated to the protection and celebration of whales and their unique marine heritage in Niue and throughout the South Pacific region. According to Omatawhua founder Fiafia Rex, there still needs to be more done to ensure the protection and conservation of whales in our waters, with reminders for operators as well.
We remind them, the whale watch operators here and the Niuean people, that it is still an endangered resource and it is a shared resource. So we like to strengthen the conservation as well as we want to get the both of the best worlds for Niue, the tourism side as well as conservation of an endangered species. Not just that, it is a taonga of Niue, well-respected species. So we want to ensure that the way we move forward in terms of tourism with our whale watch operators, we want to make sure that our interaction with whales are beneficial for the whales as well as for the tourists. And in saying that, we've developed these guidelines around that scope, and we've always met with the stakeholders here in Niue, and we would like to remind the Niuean people and government representatives that our organisation is simply here to help what they can't do within their agencies.
Working in partnership with Whales Alive and the South Pacific Whale Consortium, a team of volunteers are on the island once again to gather data and conduct research. From July until October, mothers and calves use Niue seas to rest, nurse and conserve their energy for the journey to Antarctica. Niue's exclusive economic zone has also been declared a whale sanctuary, and therefore whales are a protected species.
Whales in our region are still endangered, and they come to Niue to give birth to their calves. So we want to find out things about how they communicate and navigate. We want to know about their behaviour, how many there are, and where they're distributed. So the kinds of research that we do is that we take photographs of the whales. Each one is individual and they're very, very different. So the underside of the tail flukes allows us to identify individuals and to catalogue them, just like a face. It's like a fingerprint. And so then we can look at different whales and their movements across the region. They also have distinguishing marks on their dorsal fins, and we can help to identify individual whales by their markings. So photography is one of the key things we do. We also collect skin samples using this genetic retrieval device, very cheaply made from the hardware store, and we collect pieces of skin out of the water. When the whales breach, they slough skin, and each little piece of skin contains their DNA, from which we can extract information about the sex of the animal and who it's related to right around the region. So while we're on the water, we fill out a data sheet which has information about the behaviour, the pod composition, information about the species, and some of the data that we collect. Over here we have the hydrophone, which is the underwater microphone. So we use this to record the sounds of the whales, and we're able to look at the cultural exchange in those sounds and that song travelling right across the Pacific Islands region. So those are just some of the ways which we research whales here in Niue with Omatawhua and the South Pacific Whale Research Consortium.
Public education is a big part of awareness, and public presentations have been organised for both schools starting tomorrow and on Monday. An open public presentation will be held at Matawai on Sunday evening, where people can learn more about the value of the research and protection of whales. That concludes our news bulletin for this evening. We do hope that you have an enjoyable weekend. Don't forget to check out the Alofi North Show Day this coming Saturday.